Hello there, and welcome to Phil Talking D20. So, today's video, Secrets of Magic, a review. Now, big shout out to Paizo because they got me a early release copy of this book so I could dive in early and get up to speed with this particular book. And although I have read and trawled through it, I'm still being surprised by the stuff that I'd read and forgotten, or that I simply hadn't read properly. Often the case, I think we can all agree, when it comes to RPGs and role-playing games. It's probably a running joke at this point that we all have an idea of probably what's in the rules, and we probably just about get it right most of the time. So, a review of Secrets of Magic is quite an interesting thing because it's a very interesting book because it's part player guide, part DM guide, if that makes sense. So there's a wealth of options in here for you as a player, especially if you're a caster, or thinking about being a caster, or thinking about bolting a caster archetype into a pre-existing class. But there's also a lot of stuff in here for like how to change your world, how to influence, kind of how the magic influences a world, and mechanics for completely changing how casters even behave and act at a gaming table. So it's a pretty damn sweet book. Now, the obvious thing I covered in the first video was the two new classes, because that's the thing that I think most people are excited about. We're, like I said, a fickle bunch, and the two new classes are fantastic. But I don't want to dabble in those today because I want to kind of give you a better understanding of the other content in the book with this video. I wanted to cover the classes separately. So, once you've read through the lore and the fluff and the kind of, if you like, the narrative that they put in to the introductory chapters, which give you a really cool, fun and unique look at how people in the world view magic, how practitioners of the different schools of magic view magic. You get into the classes. And once you've gone through the two new classes, you reach spells. A lot of new spells for all the traditions, which is really, really cool. So, simple things like the arcane cantrip Bullhorn, magnify your voice to be heard at distance, all the way through to, let's quickly jump to a mid-range, arcane 5th level spells. You've got Blink Charge, teleport on attack with teleport and attack with magical force. Geyser, not a Cockney geyser, actually a water geyser. Blast foes upward with superheated water, causing them to fall and leaving concealing fog, both combat and utility. Ooh. Shadow projectile. What else have we got in here? We've got primal spells. Let's ping out some primal spells. Magnetic attraction. Pull items with magnetism, even disarming metal weapons. That's a 1st level, or might be a 2nd level primal spell. 8th level primal spells. Boil blood. Brutal. I think we probably can guess what that does. And the description's wonderful. Boil a foe's blood. Say no more. What else have we got? Let's have a quick skim past primal. We go into the descriptions. What we got in? Let's have a quick look to see. Oh, of course, yeah. Then we get the specialist stuff, but we won't dabble in the specialist stuff too quickly. So, divine. What do divine get? Mimic undead. Pretend to be undead. What else have we got here? 3rd level. Impending doom, life connection, organ sight. See a foe's organs and use your knowledge to deal precision damage. For those clerics thinking about taking a dip in rogue, perhaps? A little rogue dip. What else have we got? Let's skim through. Divine 5th level spells. Healing Well, Inevitable Disaster, twist fate to damage a foe in the near future. Occult spells. Biting Words. Breadcrumbs, make a trail behind a creature. That's an occult 1st level spell. Claim Curse. Draw a creature's curse into you temporarily. What else have we got that's quite interesting? Cast into Time. Make a creature fall through time, damaging and sickening it. Prismatic Armor. Multicolored armor dazzles foes and protects against many damage types. So there's a plethora of new spells to add to your arsenal, some of which obviously will be familiar, some of which are clearly new. But like I said, spells, although there are a really good chunk of new spells, again, is only a small part of what this book brings to the table. We also have new magic items. Now these are quite interesting because they add what they call fulus. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they are a particular type of magical charm, particular to Tianzai, which is the kind of the Eastern setting that they have in Pathfinder. So it's quite interesting to see that kind of content is being snuck in. Perhaps a hint at what they are considering to do in the not too distant future. Who knows? But an interesting addition. Waterproofing wax, grim sand glass, perfect droplets. Oh, okay, yeah. Spell hearts, a new type of item that have been added. There's grimoires, which is another type of new magical item. So you have a good broad range of magical items to add to games, with some of them clearly being very specifically themed around existing parts of Golarion, which is a nice addition. Grimoires, spellbooks are useful tools for any magic user to write down incantations and runes of power. But where most spellbooks are nothing more than ink on parchment, grimoires have absorbed the magic of the spells within, magic that knowledgeable spellcasters can use to augment their spells. So they are spellbooks on steroids. So, Bestiary of Metamorphosis is a level 6 grimoire. This grimoire fancifully illustrates the spells you inscribe within it with illuminated drawings of creatures that have never existed. The pictures changing to depict new ones from time to time. Activates one action in vision, polymorph, and transmutation as its traits. Frequency once per day. Requirements: you're under the effect of a polymorph spell you prepared from this grimoire that offers a choice of multiple forms. Effect: you transform into a different form allowed by the polymorph by bending and moulding the spell's energies. This reduces the spell's remaining duration by half. The Book of Lingering Blaze. This is a level 10 grimoire. The common saying, where there is progress in the field of magic, there is always someone who uses it to set things on fire. This is probably quite true. Is engraved in gold on the cover of this red spellbook. One action in vision, meta magic, frequency once per day. If your next action is to cast an evocation spell dealing fire damage that you prepared from this grimoire, you superheat the flames, allowing the spell to ignore up to 10 resistance to fire of creatures affected by the spell. So the ability to negate and bypass a creature's spell resistance or particular kind of elemental resistance is quite unique. And it's a brilliant kind of get out of jail free card, because it's very easy, especially when you're a caster, to find that you've had a run of bad luck in a session where you've got some great spells prepared, but happen chance or fate means that the things that you are confronting in that particular session either are very resistant to or not affected by spells that you have that are, if you like, your go-to weapons of choice. Fireball being a classic example of a spell that sometimes can be absolutely fantastic and other times can feel a bit useless. Targeting a red dragon or a fire giant with a fireball is a fairly mute point. So having something that can fundamentally change up the elements of your magic to bypass resistances and things like that is a very unique tool to add to a spellcaster's arsenal. And we'll probably have a number of GMs watching this coming out in cold sweats. So again, new unique magic items that are adding something very specific and unique to the game is definitely something that's very, very cool. Now let me just see if I can skiddly bop down to spell hearts. Here's an interesting one: magical tattoos. um, they don't have many of them, but again, they really, this book, and when I read the kind of the Dungeon Master's Guide, well, it was the Games Mastery Guide, um, where they introduced these supplemental rules, it very much feels like an invitation to games masters and players to say, look, here's ideas and some solid starters for 10. Go and create. Um, so a really super simple example of a magical tattoo is called the Familiar Tattoo. It's a level 3 item. It costs 60 gold. It's tattooed on your body, 0 bulk. Typically consists of an image of a small animal or of your familiar's name written in runes. Your familiar can meld into your familiar tattoo to be carried in your skin. A single action which has the magical move and transmutation traits to meld into or exit the tattoo. Now there's a few more details, but that's the gist of it, and it's pretty cool. They vary and stack all the way up to, I think, level 12 items, but like I said, there's not many tattoos, but they are a great example of what you can create and add to a game, which I'm all in favour of. So another nice personal touch. Personal staves are an interesting one. I mentioned that in the first video, but it is effectively a rules mechanic system for creating your own stave and putting the spells that you want in a stave into it, and guidance for how much that would cost. And Bob's your uncle, you've got Gandalf's, staff, however you want to create it, which again is great because, again, it's one of these things where we have a selection of pre-created staves, and they are classics. There's the one that does the Healy, there's the one that does the fire, etc. But having the ability to create your own, and kind of, if you like, have it's something that you've created and then can roll on in kind of in-game, in-world history. And maybe you end up doing a campaign set in the same world 100 years from now, and Bob's your uncle. Your stave's bobbing around as a magical item for someone to pick up. It's a pretty cool thing to have kicking around. Now, I just want to have a quick look at spell hearts because I remember reading those and thinking they were super cool. So let's quickly skim down to page 170. Because they are pretty sweet. Spell hearts are made from the same basic materials as talismans, though their complex construction, magically iterated around the concept of a single kind of spell, gives them a variety of additional powers and means they persist rather than burning out when used. So, that already gives you an idea about what they are about, but an example of that. Flaming Star. It is a 3+ level item. affixed to armor or a weapon. A sheen of red crosses the surface of this star-shaped goldstone medallion. With the light, when the light hits it, the affixed armor or weapon is warm to the touch. The spell attack roll of any spell cast by activating this item is +7, and the spell DC is 17. You gain resistance 2 to fire if it's attached to a piece of armor. When it's attached to a weapon, after you cast a fire spell by activating the star, your strikes with the weapon deal an additional 1d4 damage until the end of your next turn. Activate, cast a spell. Effect, you cast produce flame. Type flaming star level 3, price 55 gold. They're like doubling down on, they're like, well, I mean, in a way, they've kind of summed it up themselves perfectly. They are kind of super consumables, if you like. Yeah, very cool, very useful additions. And where was the one that was the perfect droplet? Here it is, perfect droplet. Again, another 3+ level item. Intense blue water magically holds its shape, a perfect sphere. The spell DC of any spell cast by activating this item is 17. Armor. You gain resistance 2 to water effects and attacks made by water-based creatures. Weapon. After you cast a water spell by activating the droplet, your body becomes mist-like until the end of your of the turn. You can move through enemy spaces, treating each square in their space as difficult terrain. You can't move through creatures that have the water trait in this way. And then obviously the spell that it enables you to cast is Spout, which is on page 130. But yeah, again, an item that is giving you like supernatural abilities, but it only costs you, in this instance, I think, is it 55 gold? I mean, brilliant. And that's just 2 of them. There's a decent selection of spell hearts. I quite like those as items. I think they're a really good addition to the already very solid trinket system that Pathfinder 2 has really established for enabling GMs to dish out lots of low impact but still cool and interesting magical items, which is never a bad thing. Personal staves I've mentioned. Spell catalysts. The divergent magical practices of Galorian mean that there's no one way to cast a spell. Whether out of competitiveness or a desire to personalise their spell work, many magic users have added or substituted material components beyond the conventional. So these little tidbits that I read are from the if you like, the introductory fluff to each of the sections on these new types of magical items. So to give you an idea what a spell casting catalyst does, this is a really easy one. Fire starter pellets. It's already a bit of a clue in the name. And it's a level 5 or higher item, held in one hand, bulk L. Casting a spell, add 1 action to that casting of a spell. These compacted pellets of bat guano, sulfur, and magical accelerants have long been a staple for spellcasters on the battlefield. Adding a fire starter pellet to a fireball spell produces clinging flames that deal persistent fire damage to all who fail their saving throw against the effect, doubling on a critical failure. So they cost 25 gold for fire starter pellets that are the level 5 version, and the persistent fire damage they deal is 1d6. So again, these are great little kind of literally throwaway items that you can like add to your arsenal of what you can do with magic. Very, very interesting, very funky little items. And again, there's a good selection of those: healer's gel, noxious incense, shimmering dust. Yeah, brilliant little additions. So again, you can already see that not only have you got more classes, you've got more spells, you've got more items and more usable items. One of the things I've mentioned in previous videos is, for me, if it's higher than 10th level, it's not as useful to you when running a game than stuff that's kind of 1 to 10, because you're guaranteed 1 to 10, you're not guaranteed 10 plus when it comes to kind of, you know, campaigns running their course and the length of time it takes you to get into that kind of 10 to 15, 15 to 20 kind of level cap when you're running a campaign. So the fact that there's a lot of really good stuff focused in on these lower levels, but also stuff that runs to higher levels is really important, and definitely a brilliant addition. So that kind of gives you an idea for those, if you like, initial areas. Yes, there's a chunk of spells. Yes, there's new items, new spells, new classes. But where it gets really quite interesting is when we get into the section that they call the Book of Unlimited Magic. And this is where they really start to pull on a lot of different mechanical levers at your table, and how spell casting happens and why it happens. So again, this is much like in the Games Mastery Guide. These are supplemental rules that you can use to change up a campaign, a part of your gaming world in particular, add on top of to existing rules in your game if you so wish. They start with what they call cathartic magic. Now, some spellcasters draw their magic from the gods, while others shape it by precisely manipulating unseen energy. Still, others fuel their magic with raw emotion. The cathartic mages, their emotional magic is powerful, but raw and unpredictable. So, when you start getting into this section, you are getting into stuff that is going to fundamentally change how casters operate. And it's not that you have to use them, it's not that you should use them, but they are a great option for perhaps someone who has played a lot of casters across multiple different systems and is looking for something new, or for you looking to bring in maybe a villain or an NPC who is fundamentally different to what your players are used to catch them a bit off guard and make them have to kind of change up their game. So to give you an idea about how they typically work, Cathartic Mage is an archetype. So it bolts in at level 2, essentially, with its kind of the way that they've kind of built it. So let's just dive into that. Cathartic Mage education, Charisma 14, or an ability to cast spells from spell slots, which is quite interesting because you don't have to already be a spellcaster to start dabbling in this in the way that's worded. You've learned to harness a particular emotion and mix it into your magic. Choose an emotion from the emotional state section on page 196 of this book to be your catharsis emotion. If you don't already cast spells from spell slots, you learn to cast spontaneous spells and gain the caster spell activity. You gain a spell repertoire with one cantrip of your choice from a spell list of your choice. You choose this cantrip from the common spells of your chosen spell list or from other spells to which you have access on that list. Now, you're trained in spell attack rolls, spell DCs for that tradition. Your key spell casting ability for these skills is Charisma. If you can already cast spells from spell slots, you learn an additional cantrip, and your spellcasting from your current active spellcasting tradition. Now, you gain the catharsis reaction and the settle emotion activity. So catharsis is the reaction. Concentrate emotion and mental trigger determined by your catharsis emotion effect. you gain the catharsis activation effects listed for your chosen emotion. You gain that emotion's fervor benefits for 3 rounds. When your emotional fervor ends, you suffer the listed emotional fallout after using catharsis. So, to put that into context, it's kind of a combination of, if you like, a rage ability and a magic ability, although rage is really only giving you an idea about how you can go into it as a state, but when you come out of it, there's a penalty. Does that make sense? And then obviously it develops across classes. Basic cathartic spellcasting is a 4th level. Focus spell, 4th level. It kind of develops along those lines. But the emotional states, to put those in context, now the first one they list is anger, because alphabetically it's A. Your destructive wrath allows you to harm your foes but causes you pain in the process. Catharsis trigger, an enemy deals damage to you. You can't use this reaction if you're fatigued. The activation, if you're grabbed, immobilized or restrained, you can attempt to escape. If you succeed, the creature or hazard imposing a condition on you takes force damage equal to your level if applicable. Emotional fervor, when you cast a spell from your spell slots, if the spell deals damage and doesn't have a duration, you gain a status bonus to the spell's damage equal to the spell's level. And you gain the draw eye spell. Emotional fallout, you become fatigued until you settle your emotions, which is a bit like the regaining your focus spells mechanic, in a very simple way of kind of wording it. You've got awe, you've got fear, essentially all the strong major emotions enable you to create magical effects. It's a role player's dream, I think, is probably how I would best describe it, because because it's so intrinsically linked to the character's emotional state. There is an obvious strong emphasis on role playing, how that affects the character and how that then is deployed in a magical sense via the character. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be challenging to play, but it doesn't make it any less cool and unique. And in fairness, they do talk about making sure that the party, the GM and the players are all kind of aware of the complications of that element to the game might have. Because this isn't a book for beginners. It's a book for experienced and established players. That doesn't say that a beginner can't have a damn good go and enjoy doing it, I think. But I think that's one of those things. Some of these are very unique, cool, but challenging to kind of bring to the table without it just being something that you're yep-anding. You're going to want to bring some RP to this to get it really kind of rolling and really having an impact at the table. So we've got elementalism as another addition to the kind of the magical tropes, if you like, that we can bring to the table, which again, as you probably guessed, is based on the elements. They talk about druidic orders that utilize this particular kind of magic. There are druid feats baked into this section to help druids get up and running and off the ground with elemental magic. What else have we got in here? Fire resistance, natural swimmer, sheltering cave, advanced elemental spell. So there's whole new ways to tweak out and change druid, because again, when you think about spellcasters, it's very easy to focus in on the obvious ones and just go, oh, wizard and sorcerer, they're spellcasters. But druid is a major kind of part in that place. And again, there's even content for monks in this book. So don't kind of wane on this book because you're just like, oh, well, it's really for magical characters and it's probably not got anything in it that I'm going to want to use. I mean, if you never play a magic caster in your life, but you're a GM and your world has magic in it, this is still a really useful book. So Elementalism gives you a really good solid breakdown of stuff that you can bring to the table and include stuff like I mentioned for Monk. There's an elemental spells list, so it's really grounded. It's really rounded out. Like I said, this book enables you to really make quite big changes to how you've played classes that you might have played a dozen or more times, and suddenly you've got a new way of doing it, which is fab. Flexible preparation. This is a whole new way of preparing spells and how you use them as a caster. For millennia, debate raged among magical circles as to which spellcasters have the edge. Those who cast spontaneously, since they can pull out whichever of those spells they require in a pinch, or those who prepare their daily spells, since they can plan and change out their spells each day to meet varying needs. Yet there have also been those who dared to have it all. This one is really unique. You don't get as many spells, but you basically get the best of both worlds without bogging down in it too much. Again, it fits in as an archetype, so it's a way of fundamentally changing up how a caster can work and play. But yeah, very cool idea. Geomancy, a whole new school. The natural vistas of the world are varied and beautiful, and they contain power just waiting to be tapped. From the burning sands of a desert to the freezing tundra of the taiga, from the breathless heights of the tallest peak to the claustrophobic caverns deep underground. Each type of terrain holds its own wonders. Geomancy is the study of magic within these places, and while it has much in common with the primal forces of Druidism, it focuses on the specifics of the many types of terrain and how they can resonate with someone who respects those details. It's mad, isn't it? This book really surprised me. I knew there was 2 new classes. We all knew that. The cat was out of the bag. We play tested them. We gave our feedback. They paid brilliant attention to that feedback, and they've come back with 2 great offerings to the community. What I didn't expect them to do was to be so kind of out there with how they just kind of got hold of magic and shook it around and was just like, what else can we do with it? What about this? What about that? What other like mysticisms and traditions exist within folklore and kind of tales? And how can we come up with mechanics to make them work at the table? Very cool stuff. Rivers course, tides ebb and flow, and water shifts from ice to vapor. So this is aquatic geomancy. Casting spells in water calls for a free flow of ideas and emotions. Geomantic rituals intended to change one thing to another often take place in aquatic terrain or in a liminal space between aquatic terrains and another type of terrain, such as a beach. And then again, we have, after the breakdown and the rules and the ideas and the flavour and the fluff of geomancy, we have the archetype. So again, why these work really well is because you can have been playing for a little while and, you might have a 5th level character and you pick this book up and Bob's your uncle. You can leverage something in from the get-go. The archetype system is ideal for that. I know free archetype is something that seems to be very popular from the amount of kind of chatter it seems to pick up on Reddit and the kind of the way that people speak so highly of it, the videos that have been done about it and the comment sections of those videos where people rave about it. I use it. My group really like it. I basically I don't play 2E now without free archetype. I have smaller parties than the recommended 4. Um, so it's a great way of just giving players a little bit of an edge. And to be fair, helping them really kind of knuckle down in their minds what they're creating, because it really offers some unique opportunities. And these archetypes really kind of enhance that, the way that you can be a really kind of unique caster now. Yeah, there's so many different offerings in here. The one that comes after Geomancy is Ley Lines. And again, a whole kind of rich, detailed section talking about kind of ley lines and nodes and how they enable you to kind of, you know, generate magic. And again, as it runs through, you go into that kind of whole focus and kind of way that you can build that into a character. So you've got a lot of options with this, and we've, on top of what we've already talked about, we've got pervasive magic, shadow magic, seeds, soul forged armaments, Thessalonian rune magic. I mean, there is a huge kind of chunk of stuff. True names. Now I know true names from 40k, Warhammer 40,000. If you learn a demon's true name, you bind its power to yourself, and it has to kind of, it almost becomes like a slave to your character. There's various things in the 40k mythology about people trying to do that, and this uses a similar kind of ethos of, the more you learn about names, the more power you can draw from, and the more kind of abilities of theirs that you can pull on. Super cool. Wellspring magic, that's very funny. That basically is something that's in you that you can't quite control, and there's a table that you have to roll on when you use the magic and draw on the magic that can cause unexpected events to happen, based on the magic getting a little bit out of control and getting a bit loose and a bit out of your hands. Things like rain falling, but it's not rain, it's like illusions of trinkets and things connected with your magical tradition or your faith or your beliefs and things like that. So it can just suddenly start raining symbols of, you know, Aomi Day or something, if you're a paladin with this particular kind of magic within them. Very funny. But yeah, so to boil it down in a nutshell, is this book will give you at least several years of content, in the way that it will enable you to radically change what your characters can do with magic, what your villains can do with magic as games masters, how people use magic, cast it, interact with it, understand it, where they draw their magical energies from, how much of an impact that has on the world. One of the things that I'm going to talk about in the second video, because I've kind of stopped at ley lines, is kind of where I'm happy to say that I've reached in this video. But when we go past ley lines, we enter into some really unique stuff that I want to cover in a separate video, because some of them are very much world-changing mechanics, which are super fun to look at, and again, shadow magic is a really big, well fleshed out and quite important section for parts of the Galarian kind of world lore, Zon Chthon worshippers and so forth. But again, soul forged armaments is a really cool, unique thing that I want to discuss in more detail, and I don't want this video to run on and on. But hopefully this has given you a good steer on, if you like, the first 3/4 to half of the book, including the first video you've probably watched, which obviously is all about the 2 new classes and how they have improved and been adjusted by Paizo since the playtest, which does indicate, I'm hoping you have some knowledge of those classes. And if you don't, I'll make sure I link the rules and things like that from the playtest, just so you can compare yourself. But yeah, this book will last you years. It is a really incredible tool for changing up how players play, how games masters build, and it enables you to create unique campaigns or really unique areas in a game world like that, which is super cool. So, I mean, if this is anything to judge by where we're going to be at with Guns and Gears, that's going to be a really, again, exciting and interesting addition to Pathfinder 2, which, as far as I can tell, is simply going from strength to strength. So, hope you like the video. Like, subscribe, stay tuned. There will be a 3rd video coming out on Secrets and Magic in the not too distant future, because like I said, I want to really kind of touch in more detail pervasive magic, shadow magic, because they are very unique and very well fleshed out for what they do to a character and or what they do to a world. Soul forged armaments, again, are a great unique concept and idea. True Names is pretty interesting. Thessalonian rune magic, again, deserves more time because of how intrinsically linked it is to the world lore of obviously ancient Thessalon, Rise of the Rune Lords, and all that kind of great stuff. So again, I want to give that more time. But again, with this kind of stuff, you've got so much opportunity now to create some phenomenal characters, villain or NPC or player. This is a really, really great resource for that. So I highly recommend picking it up. I've got the PDF copy and the artwork is to die for. So I will be purchasing myself a hardback just because if this is going to be their new art style, their new colour palette, brilliant, love it. More of it, please. It's lovely. But on that bombshell, I shall bid you adieu, and I shall catch you on the next video. Peace.